Welcome to the Living in Florida podcast with Beth
and Griff. And today we're going to sit down with Mark Gordon from MDS Insurance and go over all the aspects of homeowners insurance here in Florida, the different insurances, what to expect in 24, rates, new people coming to the market, and important details when you're buying a home regarding getting new insurance. Some timings you have to really worry about where you don't want to get stuck when you're at the closing table. Also, if you already have a home and homeowners insurance, some really good important tips for what's going on and some things you might want to do every year to reshop and save yourself some money. Let's dive into that right now.
Okay. In this segment, we are going to talk homeowners insurance. I want to welcome Mark Gordon from MDS Insurance Services. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah,
Griff.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming in.
Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and your company.
Sure. I've been an insurance agent since 2005. I was originally an Allstate agent for the first 5 years of my career, and then I became an independent agent in 2010. We're a full-service personal line and commercial line insurance agency, and we provide insurance for homeowners insurance, condos, boats, umbrellas, motorcycles, auto, and all commercial products as well.
Now, we all know that the insurance world is changing and there's new laws, there's new rules. So you want to go into a little bit about what this is going to do?
Yeah, a lot of our customers, first question, what do we do about insurance? How much is it? Some people are surprised it's so reasonable sometimes, and other people are like, it's 3 times what they were expecting. And there's been nonstop talk in the news with the 6 new carriers, all the new laws from the state.
Well, we're hoping that the new laws that were passed in 2023, Senate Bill 2A, we're hoping that that's going to have an effect on rates. And the primary thing that Senate Bill 2A did, it eliminated one-way attorney fees. Now, by the Office of Insurance Regulation, they've determined that out of the 9% of claims that are filed in the U.S., 79% of those claims go into litigation in the state of Florida. And that's what's really caused significant harm to rates for the consumer, because the attorneys and the plaintiffs are now going to go ahead and get attorney fees if they win or lose. Okay, so when you have that high of a litigation rate on every single claim, the insurance companies at times will find themselves in a situation where the actual litigation costs can be 3 times the original claim.
$20,000 roof claim turns into $100,000 in bills.
In litigation costs. Oh. Right, correct. What happened was the Senate 2A bill, what it did is it eliminated those attorneys' costs. So now, no matter who wins, whether it's the insurer or the insured, each party is responsible for their own attorney's fees. That is going to hopefully help drive down costs of insurance, that alone.
Yeah, because there's even a whole bunch of companies that are specifically just for roof claims.
The other thing that's really helped also is that under that bill was the assignment of benefits claims, all right, meaning that you actually get a roofer comes out, you sign an assignment of benefits, and basically that means now that roofer has total control over your claim. They can actually go ahead if they wanted to, if they're not satisfied with the amount of money that they're going to receive from the insurance company, they can now bring in their attorneys to help fight the claim, or they can keep the claim open for an excessive period of time while they're litigating it. And what that does is it creates a problem for the insured, because let's say the insurance company is now going to drop the insured. They have an open claim. Where do they go for insurance? That causes a problem as well.
Is that loophole supposed to be addressed in the new law?
It's already addressed in the new law. There is no more allowed. There is no way that you can assign benefits to a third party. Cannot assign them at all. So that's another thing that has helped dramatically as well. The other thing that the bill has done is it has reduced the time that an insured has to file a claim. It used to be that an insured had 2 years to file a claim. Now you only have 1 year to file a claim. And it used to be that you had 3 years to file a supplemental claim after the original claim. Mm-hmm. That's been brought down to 1.5 years.
Yeah, well, those are still reasonable timeframes.
Yeah, no, they definitely are. I mean, I would think that if you have any potential roof damage from like a storm that has come through, you're going to know within the next summer months if you have a roof leak. So that's another thing. Another thing that's changed is that attorneys and roofers can no longer pay public adjusters.
Okay, that's going to help tremendously.
That's going to help
Yeah,
a
that
lot
was
as well.
big.
Yeah, exactly. So that's going to help tremendously.
It became the Wild West for insurance claims in
Yeah,
Florida.
it really has.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
God the new laws are actually
Yeah.
starting to put some limits on a lot of this craziness.
And we have new carriers in the state.
Correct. We do have some new carriers that are coming in. Like I said, the Senate Bill 2A has created a situation where new carriers are now coming in because they can start off in a situation where they don't have any prior pending litigation. So they can come in under the new laws, be more profitable, hopefully.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it kind of seemed like they were all waiting for the laws to take place so they could kind of come in and have like a fighting chance versus
Correct.
just
Yeah,
automatically
yeah,
12 months
yeah,
later being
yeah.
inundated.
Correct. Yeah. And the other factor has been reinsurance costs. And reinsurance costs are basically insurance for the insurance company to
Okay.
basically, be able them to afford to pay out claims. So they get an insurance policy to help them with paying out claims. Those reinsurance costs have gone through the roof because of the
see.
storms we've had and a lot of the claims that we've had in the state of Florida. Once those reinsurance costs can hopefully start coming down, then we should see rates either stabilizing or possibly going down. I don't see the rates going down dramatically. I see them stabilizing, but I see that it gives the opportunity for more carriers to come in that will hopefully drive pricing down.
At least more options for everybody.
More options for everybody, which
and
is
make
the
it
key.
much easier to get insurance. So.
Correct.
So that leads into, what does somebody need to get an insurance quote to shop this, or if they're buying a house from you? Like, it's pretty straightforward. Some people think it's really complicated. It's just some basic information.
Well, the simplest thing to do is obviously to reach out to an insurance agent that you trust that's knowledgeable. The second thing would be, while you're in the process of going through and purchasing the house, is get the 4-point inspection and the wind mitigation inspection over to that agent as quickly as possible. What that's going to do is it's going to allow the agent to know, at least on the 4-point. Now, 4-point inspection covers 4 areas, critical areas. It covers the roof, the HVAC, the plumbing, and the electrical.
Mhm.
So all those 4 areas are going to be covered. Now, some carriers only require a 4-point inspection after 30 years. Some required after 20 years, and some required after 40 years. I always tell prospective clients, get it anyways.
You're already there and you're already paying the inspector. Sometimes the 4 points really not that much more
No.
with a lot of the inspection companies.
Yeah.
So and then you also have that for leverage in your negotiation with your purchase. So,
Correct.
and speaking of that, a lot of people don't understand, or a lot of agents actually don't understand, to tell their clients, make sure you get your insurance quote during your inspection period. The minute you put that house under contract, you need to call somebody just like Mark and get a quote going, because you can, I mean, we can attest to this, especially when we sell with the other agents on the buying side.
Yes.
They didn't prep their people, and then we've had them where they suddenly their ratios don't work for their loan.
That is correct. And it's sad to see that an agent doesn't educate their client. For example, if somebody's coming from the Midwest, those are totally different
Yeah,
rates.
they're used to paying $200 a year for homeowners.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not what South Florida is. So I always like to tell everybody, please get their quotes during the inspection period so that we have a little bit of leverage and we have some options.
Yeah, the option is for the buyer, if they can't make that obligation, they can know to go ahead and bounce from that house and move on to another
Yes.
one.
The most important thing when you're looking at the 4-point inspection, when you're looking at for qualifying for a homeowner's policy, is for the agent is to determine that, make sure there's no deficiencies. Because there are small little things in a 4-point inspection that can cause you not to be able to bind coverage with a specific company.
Yes.
It could be an electrical panel issue, because there are certain electrical panels that are not eligible for coverage.
Yes. And
For example, Federal Pacific,
Yeah,
Yes.
Zinco.
Zinco,
Yeah,
Yes.
FP&L,
Challenger.
not the current FP&L company, but FPL boxes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So and
There
we
are
have-
certain.
yeah.
There are certain ones. So what happens is that if there are any deficiencies, we can advise our clients, hey, listen, you need to get these deficiencies corrected somehow with the seller prior to closing,
yes.
and get a new updated 4-point inspection,
Mhm.
Yes.
because otherwise we're not going to be able to bind coverage.
Yeah, and that's a mental note to everyone out there. If your agent does not walk into a house with you that you're considering buying and look at the electrical panel and already know which ones are banned, you need to find a new agent, because it's really a 101. There's a whole bunch of information out there on the web, and it's pretty straightforward. That's really important because that has snuck up on a lot of people too. Then all of a
Yes,
sudden, here's a $4,000 bill, $5,000 bill on a bigger house, $8,000 for a big panel box.
I'm glad you brought that up
Yeah,
because
it's very important.
extremely
Yeah.
important.
And it's the plumbing, and
It
it's
is
the
the plumbing.
HVAC, and
Yep.
it's the roof.
Yep. And the plumbing, polybutylene is
Correct.
not really able to get coverage.
No,
No, like zero chance.
Zero chance, unless you go with the state-backed carrier system.
Yes.
The roof could have some cracked or missing tiles.
Yep.
Those need to be fixed or replaced as well prior to.
Yes.
Some carriers don't even allow patching,
Yes.
like on a shingle roof in specific. So some carriers say, nope, if it's patched or repaired, we don't want it.
Would they let you separate, like if you have a flat roof over the patio, would they allow that to get repaired separately?
If the main roof is okay and the flat roof is at its end of useful life, which is usually around 10 years, if that roof has got ponding, which is standing water that stays on the roof, or if it has granular loss and it's just determined not to be in good shape, it would have to be replaced.
But they'll like allow that, not the whole roof system, just that flat roof.
Yeah, they'll if the flat roof is the only issue and,
Only issue.
and the main roof system's fine, then you just got to get that flat roof system corrected.
Question we have from a lot of our clients is, what about wind mitigation? They're a little confused of what it is, what it entails, what it means.
What the wind mitigation inspection does for you is it provides the agent with information to be able to apply premium discounts to a policy. And there's several sections of the wind mitigation that are important that will drive rate. One is whether the roof system is what they call Florida Building Code equivalent, which means that the roof was put on in 2002 or newer in every county outside of Broward County and Dade County, and 1994 newer in Broward County. And that segment of that inspection is going to drive the premium discount. The next one is, how is the roof underlayment, the wood, how is it attached to the roof? Is it attached with certain size nails spaced out in a certain distance? Then it becomes how the roof is attached to the house.
Yeah.
That's really important too.
Yes.
And there's categories under each. So you can either have toenail, you can have clip, you can have single wraps, and you can have double wraps. Double wraps obviously is going to give you the most premium discount.
Okay.
Toenail is going to basically give you the least premium
And
discount.
we'll throw some graphics up on the screen for what those mean, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of times we've had customers, including us, when we got our roof done, the whole rest of the structure with the nails, everything else gets upgraded to come into a modern standard. And then luckily our house came fully strapped, double strapped, in fact, from 1976. That's an option. A lot of people can actually add strapping to the roof system.
You can modify the roof system, and a lot of times, let's say you only get clips because the way it's designed in the law, how the strapping has to be connected. So in order to get single wraps, you have to have 3 nails on one side of the truss and 1 nail on the other side. Clips is going to be 2 and 1. So what happens is that you could have a roofer come out and add nails. It's a little bit of a process, but it helps with the discounts because the FBC or non-FBC is going to cause you to get a higher or lower discount. The nailing of the underlayment is going to give you a discount. Whether or not you have toenail, clips, straps is going to give you a discount. Then you have what they call opening protection. And your opening protection is, if you think about it, is the hurricane protection. Whether you have hurricane shutters, whether you have impact windows, you're going to have 3 categories under that that's going to give you premium discounts.
Yes. Most damage is from the wind coming in and pushing up on the roof.
Correct. So if you have an incursion of air, it's going to create basically a vacuum. And if the air pressure keeps building and building and building, and if the roof is not connected, secured, then
It
the roof
goes,
could come up.
"Boop."
It lifts.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you can also have the wind from the outside lifting the roof as well.
And that's why hip roof structures, where all the roofs slope down to the ground, gives you a further discount because the wind is deflected upward. Off
Correct.
of
The
it.
hip's going to give you the best discount. Gable's going to give
Oh,
you
yeah,
the
the
second,
hip, yeah.
and then flat is going to be the third.
The third, yeah.
Yeah, that's important too. And these are all these factors that go into the rate at the end.
So what about for as far as like the window coverings and impact? So if a house had like half impact windows, half accordion shutters, or half old-fashioned metal steel shutters on clip, as long as the entire outer perimeter is protected, do they get that discount?
Yes. So the way it works with the wind mitigation credit with respect to hurricane opening protection is that all glass coverings have to be covered with an impact device, Miami-Dade approved, or impact windows, Miami-Dade approved, and a garage door or any other solid doors all have to be impact rate Miami-Dade product
So
approved.
plywood does not count.
Plywood does not
That's right.
count.
Plywood does not count.
You think you have wind coverage,
It did back in the day, but no longer.
but no longer.
No longer.
Yep. Yeah, we had customers scrambling to go buy plywood when they would sell a house sometimes to say we have the covering, but that was a long time ago.
Now, one of the things that insureds can do sometimes, because at times when you go to buy a house, it's very possible that an insured may get an A2 or an A3 rating on the opening protection. And what that basically means is that there's one particular door or window that doesn't have a covering that is wind protected for impact. A lot of times you can tell the insured, hey, listen, if you go and get one extra panel and have somebody put it up for you and put the hardware, you'll get the A1 credit rating. And you can do that at any time during the policy period. So anytime that you have a deficiency in a wind mitigation credit, if you get it corrected or upgraded, it doesn't matter what time during the policy there it is you can go ahead and get that credit prorated for the remaining term of that. Yeah, so it's not like it's just once a year that you can make the adjustment.
Okay, so if they put that new front door in because it wasn't impact,
correct,
then you can then make that adjustment.
Right, and the same thing if you get a new roof midterm,
Okay.
you can go ahead and get the credits.
Yeah, and something else for homeowners out here, make sure if you haven't thoroughly reviewed your documents from your policy, pull those out or get a copy from your insurer right now and go through them with them, because our wind rating for the, I don't know if it was the roof system or the window system after we got the windows installed, was a category off.
Yeah, so a simple review with the agent is going to be extremely important, because on the quote itself page that you get with your policy, sometimes it doesn't define what credits you're getting. It's in specifics, like the wind mitigation. It'll give you all the credits listed. Some just give you a summary of the discount itself, and that's it. So you as a consumer, you really don't know, am I getting hurricane rated opening protection or not? Because you're just getting a number. So it's important to talk to your agent and say, hey, listen, I got a new roof, or I did this and I did that. Am I getting the maximum credits? Now, another important thing is that when you do get a quote from an agent, is to talk to the agent and make sure that you understand policy itself. Because a quote is going to be different from a policy in the sense that the quote is not going to give you all of the specific limitations and exclusions within a policy. So it's really important that when you get new coverage, if you read your policy, understand the special provisions, the exclusions, and what your responsibilities are, and the coverages. If you have any questions, call your agent. It's really important, because a lot of times what we find is people will buy a policy, something happens, they didn't read the policy, and they don't have coverage, or they have limited coverage, and then they get surprised with their own bill.
And then that kind of leads into as far as even getting your home inspection and like a 4-point, speaking to a good provider like Mark or agents like us, you have to make sure you have a good inspector show up. Because we've seen home inspector companies where somebody literally watched videos on what to do and show up and they're like, oh, this is my first time. And
so let's make sure that you're working with a reputable home inspection company that can do the 4-point, the wind mit, and give you an overall view of that home that you're purchasing, so that Mark can give you the absolute best rate possible.
And if you're in South Florida or Orlando South, give us a shout or drop a comment. We will get that out to you.
Yeah, there are certain circumstances where an inspector may make an error. Yes. And it's just up to the agent to be able to review it and say, hey, wait, this doesn't make any sense. You got to call the inspector back and let them know. Sometimes inspectors don't look for the permit for like a roof, for example, and they'll just put the original date because they just don't want to have to go look for the permit. And then the agent, we find the permit, and then we go back to the inspector and say, hey, listen, I found the permit. You need to adjust your wind mitigation and the 4-point.
If you want to check for yourself on some basics, like the age of your roof or when the last permit was pulled to have a new roof installed, almost everything is public record. Broward County has tons of records. Your city, you can call the building department and get those records. In most cities, it's right online. You just put in your address.
I jump right on the city website and I look up permit history.
That's it. You go right to the building division and it's right there for you. So you can easily check out some basics if you want to.
Yeah, one of the things that is important as well is that some cities and some counties hold the permit information. So what you need to do as an insured, or as a prospective insurer, is if you want to check the permit history on a specific address, sometimes The city won't maintain the permit, the county maintains the permit. So if you don't see it at the city level, you may want to check the county level as well, because the permit might be there. And that happens a lot in Palm Beach County,
Yes. I was just going to
where
say
Palm Beach County
unincorporated.
handles a lot of the unincorporated areas,
Yes.
and then the cities will carry the incorporated. So you may not find it at the city, which you think then, wait a second, there's no permits at all. I can't find them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's
You gotta
because
go
it's
to the
sitting
county.
at the county.
There's a permit and it's somewhere.
It's
so-
somewhere. Yeah, exactly.
If there's not a permit, it doesn't count,
It
by the
doesn't
way.
count.
So
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very important, because if there's not a permit, it doesn't
it
count.
doesn't count. Yeah. So it got done on the side. It really doesn't count. Just part of what we do in prepping to kind of research that is we automatically hit the county records and the city records on that house to get some details. We know going in before we even make that offer. So
Yes.
we can curtail our offer. We could see a roof was never done, even though they claimed it was done 12 years ago. And, they had a patch, but in the description, they were lying about the roof being replaced. And there's no proof there. And so suddenly you have a huge leverage advantage in your negotiation. So just make sure whoever you're working with is doing those kind of things for you. And if not, call us.
One of the other things I'd really like to touch on quickly is important when people are buying a house. A lot of the insurance carriers now will have the claims on a house follow the house and not the insured.
Yes. I'm glad you touched on
Yes,
that.
We've had
And
that.
that's really important, because what happens is you can go ahead and give somebody a quote, because there's a difference between a quote and actually going through the underwriting process
Yes.
to bind coverage. A lot of carriers now, that if there's a claim on the house within the last 5 years and it's a water claim, there are certain carriers that will not accept that house eligible, even if it's a new purchase.
Yes.
So that's something that you want to make sure that you advise your clients, and you'll find out in the disclosure, I presume, when the contract is provided to you, whether or not there's any prior claims on the house. Now, acts of God don't count. Lightning hit doesn't matter. Windstorm doesn't matter. Rain does. Now, water damage from a roof leak will count, because it will be considered water damage.
Okay.
Water damage doesn't necessarily have to be from a broken pipe, because the way the central claims exchange works is they don't define water damage as a pipe leak sometimes. They'll just define it as water damage. And sometimes it'll show as water damage from a leak. The insurance company doesn't care. A lot of carriers are limiting water damage claims to $10,000. And that was another reason why rates were so high, is because of all the litigation and the public adjusters
Yep.
and getting
We saw,
whatever amount of
yeah,
money you
one-
need to get out of them for a water claim
one-
that's minor.
One
Right.
drip of water on the edge of the cabinet, people were getting
A whole new
$50,000
kitchen.
kitchens.
A
yeah,
whole new
yeah, we
kitchen.
saw it
Yes.
many times.
There are a lot of carriers that are doing that. And then there are still carriers out there that are providing full water coverage as well. It just depends on the carrier.
Buying options, like you want the full coverage, pay more. If you want less, pay less.
Some carriers do have that option. Some carriers have what they call a scaled up version of that, where you can buy 10,000, you can buy 20,000, you can buy 30,000, you can buy up to $50,000 of water damage
and
coverage.
get the coverage you want.
Get the coverage you want. And some have unlimited.
Okay, so Mark, we have a client purchasing a new home here in South Florida. Well, not a new home to them. Go over what type of coverage do they need for this purchase?
Well, primary, if they're going to have a mortgage, and even if they're not going to have a mortgage, it's very important for them to get what they call an HO3 policy.
Okay.
And an HO3 policy is going to give you basically open perils. And which that means is that all these particular incidents that could happen to your house, whether it's a water leak, a fire, it's smoke damage, a hurricane, anything that could, open peril is always going to give you the best coverage. So you have the provisions of the policy that are special, basic, and broad. And not to get too technical, basic coverage is going to give you named perils, which means they're going to basically illustrate on your policy what perils of coverage are going to be covered in the event of a loss. So it names them. Now, some of the times those policies, like a basic policy, will eliminate water damage completely. Broad is similar to basic. It's going to name more peril. It's going to name more perils than the basic, but it's going to be. And then the special is the best, which is going to give you the open peril, which is going to give you the broadest coverage available.
And you can jump on the phone and talk to that home buyer and go over those details and what their options would be.
Correct, because there are other policies that are out there that people can buy, like an HO8. An HO8 is a very watered down version of an HO3, and it does not cover damage for water losses, for sudden breakage and seepage, which is really important. And people, because that's going to be a lower premium than a homeowner's policy. Sometimes on a dwelling fire policy, for example, let's say you have a client that's buying a house and they're going to be renting it to other tenants. If they get what they call a DP1, a DP2, or a DP3, a DP3, which is a dwelling fire policy 3, is going to have the broadest coverages like an HO3. It's going to be special provisions for open perils. On the flip side, if you get a DP1, you're now looking at a basic policy where there's not going to be water damage and certain other coverages that are important as well. So it's important to understand what type of policy you're buying.
So Mark, if your home's paid off and you get a renewal rate of, say, $100,000, and you're just like, forget it, I'm going to skip insurance, it's not worth it to me, financially you can accept that you don't want insurance. Is there anything you could do to still pad yourself a little bit?
Well, yeah, you can get a policy, what would be considered an X-wind policy. So it's going to provide you with an HO3 special provisions policy that basically just excludes wind.
Okay.
You'll still have coverage for the dwelling, you'll still have coverage for your personal content, and you'll still have liability coverage. That's one avenue. The other avenue is that if you're totally fine without insurance at all, I still always recommend people carry at least the liability. Yeah. Because if you have a pool or somebody slips and falls in your house or outside or something happens, that at least you're covered in that way.
And those kind of policies are relatively cheap compared to the full.
Correct. Yeah. Now, a liability only policy for a personal home is probably going to be about $400 to $500 a year for $1 million of coverage. And then you can really reduce costs on an X-wind policy by probably 40-50%, sometimes even more. Big factor is going to be the age of the home and where it's located.
That leads to flood insurance. Do you need flood insurance if you have wind and hurricanes coverage already? A lot of people are confused on this subject.
Flood insurance is important irrespective of whether you have wind or hail. Now, because a flood policy, whether you're in a flood zone or you're not in a flood zone, is going to provide you a level of protection. Because what a lot of people don't understand is that standing water on the outside of your house that seeps in through a crack in the foundation is not going to be covered under your homeowner's policy. It's flood because it's water incurring through the house. And it's a regular flood.
During a hurricane. So a hurricane comes, you have some wind-driven rain or water seeps in from the canal coming up a little bit. What is that covered?
This is where it causes a lot of problems. When you're in a situation where you have a hurricane, and this happened out in Louisiana and a lot of these other coastal communities, especially Fort Myers, where they got hit real hard, that creates the problem. Whether is the flood caused by rising water or is the flood caused by wind-driven rain? That's where we see a lot of the litigation coming up and a lot of the insurance companies saying, hey, it's not our coverage. And then the flood carrier says, well, it's not ours. So now the insured has to fight to see who's going to provide coverage. Because it's very difficult to determine, is it the wind, depending on where you live? If there's no rising water coming out from a source or a body of water, it's very easy to say in most instances that, well, the wind caused the water to come into my house. Where if you're near a body of water and now you have an incursion of water coming out from that body of water, even though it's rising water, but the wind is what drove the water in.
Yeah.
But there's still going to be a fight. And this is why Citizens has changed its rules. We're starting in 2027 that if you want to be insured with Citizens, you have to carry flood insurance whether you're in a flood zone or not. I always advise anybody that living in South Florida or Florida where we're hurricane prone is to have flood insurance, because it could be where we get a slow moving hurricane with a substantial amount of rain.
Yes.
And the sewer systems can't manage the water, especially on a slow moving hurricane. That's going to potentially, depending on how high your house is elevated, could cause damage and water incursion into your home.
And that would
well.
be strictly a flood claim.
That's going to be a flood claim.
That's another reason to make sure you talk to somebody like Mark, weigh all those options for you and see what you need to do. Mark and Beth, we've dealt with clients getting some surprises after they own their house for a year or two, and you hear it in the news a lot. Suddenly, here's a letter from your insurance company. You've been with them for 5 years, and they say, give us a new roof right now, or we're going to drop. What's the basis if you get a letter from your insurance company saying you must meet these new criteria? Like, what recourses, systems should people follow to verify, before they start spending $40,000, $50,000, $60,000?
Well, one of the things people can do is that if the insurance company comes back and says, your roof doesn't no longer qualifies for coverage because it has less than 5 years of useful life, you can elect to get an updated 4-point inspection to see if the inspector will put 5 years. If he doesn't put that there's 5 years remaining useful life, then yes, unfortunately, you're in a situation where you have to either put on a new roof or find a carrier that's going to exclude the roof entirely, which can be found in the surplus market. But most of the time, people are going to find themselves in a situation, unfortunately, that they're going to have to replace the roof.
So let's say your roof inspector comes out and gives your roof 5 years of good, useful life, and your current carrier says that's not good. Can you go ahead and see if another carrier would accept a different lifespan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are certain underwriting guidelines that the insurance companies say that, hey, listen, if your roof is over 20 years old, we don't want you. You're ineligible. Some carriers, like I said, all carriers now, when you have a policy, have to give you coverage if you have 5 years remaining useful life.
And that's
However,
part of the new law.
part of the new law. However, the insurance company, as part of its underwriting guidelines, still has the capability that when you're going to go buy a new policy from them, it doesn't matter if you have 5 years remaining useful life or not. If your roof is over a certain year, you're not eligible.
So this is why they have to call you.
This is why I have. Now, Citizens is the only carrier that will allow, as long as you have 5 years remaining useful life, you're fine and you can get coverage. So if you're an existing Citizens customer and you get an offer of takeout from another carrier, and as that carrier's rate is less than 20% higher than the Citizens rate, then you must go.
Yeah, they are kicking you out.
They're kicking you out and you have to go. Now, I get a lot of these questions all the time, and a lot of people are confused by the assumption process and what that means when they are getting kicked out or they're going to another private carrier because of that, and that carrier is $1,000 or $2,000 more or $1,000. People don't realize that even though you get an assumption letter and it says that your policy is being assumed in December, that just means that that carrier is taking over the claims responsibility as of December. Your policy and its coverages and its premiums and all of the contracts that you have with that policy are going to remain until your renewal. If your renewal date is July, well, you're not going to be switching technically over to that carrier until July with that new rate, which leads to the ability of the customer, which leads me to say to my customers, hey, listen, when you're about a month or two away from that new carrier picking you up, give me a call and I'll run it through the market again and see if there's anything better. You're not obligated to go with that carrier if I can find a better rate in the private market.
Of our clients, previous clients calling us saying, what am I going to do? And that's why we pass your number on so that you can answer those questions for them.
Yeah, it's important because it's very confusing.
It is very.
So if you're getting sold off to Citizens and you're not sure, call you at the end of the policy term. But you can't shop it too early, right? You have to wait.
No, you can actually, with an admitted carrier, you can leave that carrier at any point in time you want, as long as you've had prior coverage for more than a year. Like if you didn't have coverage and you go to Citizens and they allow you to have coverage and you've been with Citizens for 2 months, but you have no prior history because you lapsed coverage for 3 years and you just decided you didn't want it, then you can't go to a private carrier. You have to have at least a year. Right. But as long as you got a year of history with a prior carrier, then yeah, you can leave that carrier at any point in time you want.
Okay, so today's segment, I know we have filled your head with a ton of amazing information from Mark. So when you have those questions, reach out to Mark. And Mark, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been amazing. I know we've all learned a ton from you. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you very much for having
Mark.
me.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
All right. So thanks so much for watching us today. And we hope you hit that like and subscribe button. And we will see you on the next segment. Bye. Mark, thanks so much for being on the show today.
Yeah,
How can our clients get in touch with you?
Well, they can just call my office at 954-227-6970, or they can email me, mark@mdsinsurance.com.
And Mark is located here in Coral Springs, Florida.
Correct.
But you can cover anywhere in the state of Florida.
In the state of Florida. Service the whole entire state.
Yep. And we will have Mark's information linked down below. Well, Mark, thanks for being on the show today. We'll have all of Mark's information linked below. And we will see you on the next podcast. We'll see you next time.